Hello and welcome to another episode of Vital DocTalk. And on today's episode, we have Dr. Hilary Patzer. Welcome to the show, Dr. Hilary. How are you doing?
Thank you. It's awesome to be with you. Thank you for having me on. And I'm doing well. It's Friday, so
Awesome.
I'm doing great.
Yeah, Friday is my last day to get everything done, and I think that we're gonna crush it together. So why don't we just dive right in? Tell us more about your background. What led you here on your medical journey, and what do you envision the future being like for yourself?
Okay, so I'll keep it as short and simple as I can. I grew up a very competitive endurance athlete. So ever since I could walk, I have been competing. And my sport of choice when I was younger, beyond ballet and cross-country running and water skiing and mountain biking and road biking and all of that, was cross-country skiing. So that's kind of how I climbed the athletic ladder and went to college and competed Division I NCAAs. And then from those results, was invited to ski with the US ski team. And during that kind of transition between college and the ski team, I actually overtrained. So I'm one of those less is more kind of people. But I always believed, like, the harder you studied, the better grades you got. Like, the harder you did anything, the better the results. And so I just went along with my coaches who were like, no, you can handle more. You're doing really great. So I hit my peak. And then I started to come down. And even then the sports scientists were like, just eat more, take a nap. But at that point in time, like, I needed some pretty serious time off. So I watched my results kind of come to a stop. And I actually was down in South America traveling with my brother, and literally like a light bulb went off in my head. And to reverse just a couple of seconds, my mom had suggested during that time that I go see an acupuncturist who had also skied on the US ski team. And so I went to see her and was super fascinated in the medicine and what it was doing and how it was helping me. And I'd always thought I'd go into sports psychology and work for the Green Bay Packers, because that was the team that I rooted for when I was younger.
I can't wait for you guys. Yeah, the kicker's coming.
Yeah, being from Idaho, I could have whoever I wanted, and they're owned by the public, which is not true, but sort of. And Favre, I mean, seriously, he's one of the greats. So as I was somewhere in Argentina, and I was like, oh, I want to go to acupuncture school. So I came back and sort of put my ski career on hold. It took me a couple of years to sort of unwind everything, and I still ski race and everything, but just at the level I was, and met with that acupuncturist and said, okay, what are the next steps? This is what I want to do with my life. So I went to school about 14 years ago. It's a 3-year master's. I've since gotten my doctorate, hence the doctor part. And I'm now getting my second master's in health and life coaching. So I just kind of continue to sort of expand and perfect my career, my path, my journey, and be able to bring everything in to who I am and who Jada Studios, my practice, is. So, and a little caveat on that is when I went to school, all my professors were, you need to work on athletes, like this is just your world. And I was like, it has caused me so much pain and heartache. I don't want anything to do with athletes. About 4 or 5 years after that, I was like, those are my people. Like, I have to work with athletes. So I'm glad that I took a little break from it, just because when I came back to it, I knew it was really real and I knew it was going to be lasting. I didn't just do it because it was easy. I am doing it because it's like every cell in my body says I should.
Awesome. And where do you envision your future going?
Oh, right. So right now I'm in St. Paul, Minnesota. I have my own private practice, and I also work for the Minnesota Vikings.
There you guys go, by the way. They're the arch rivals of the. So she grew up rooting for the Packers. Like, I'm always going to play for the Packers, or not play, work with them. And then she's working for the arch nemesis
Yep. Now I bleed purple. I bleed purple.
Boo.
So
I'm a Seahawks fan. This is boo for me.
I know. So I don't even know if we play you this year, but we do play Green Bay our first game. So no preseason games this year or anything. Green Bay comes to Minnesota, and we'll see how the first game kicks off.
Well,
I see my practice having different locations throughout the U.S., potentially the world, is what I would like to see. I really think that our treatment protocol and sort of our business plan and the elite level of the practitioners working there should be more of us around to help, the weekend warriors, the high school athletes, the college athletes, the pro athletes, and then anybody else who's just recovering from an orthopedic injury, surgery, that pain area. That's really where we focus. Even though with a master's in acupuncture and Chinese medicine, we can treat, pretty much anything. I always said I could do anything but reset a bone, but you can even help it heal a lot faster. So that's where I don't think small, clearly.
I love that. I love that, by the way, guys. In fact, just yesterday, a mentor of mine told me to read shareholder reports. So I was reading Amazon. Everybody knows them. They're like the #1 company now, and their shareholder letter. So here's just for your guys' mindset out there. From 1996 to 97, they went from 15 million and they grew by 838%. And they ended the year at 147 million, from 15 to 147 million, right? So I tell my team members, my team, right? Because we have a doctor marketing agency. I say, hey guys, let's double every year, right? And we're trying to get from like 600K to 1.2 million, right? So that's like, and they're giving me these different excuses, but I'm like, look guys, I'm not trying to go from 15 million to 150 even, or a billion or whatever, like Amazon's pace. Like, it's not that ambitious to want to double every year. Like, I feel like that should, and I always say this, I feel like that should be the minimum for every business owner. That should be your goal, right? Best case scenario, you beat it. Worst case scenario, you come in under. But if you don't have that goal, then it's so much harder to grow. Like, you're just going to be stagnant. And then, if coronavirus hits or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, I think growth is really huge. And I think a lot of us graduate from, my doctor program, MD, DO, that it's just what I've seen. There's not as much business orientation as we need. And it's like, you can't just, for my profession, you can't just put a sign out front and be like, oh, I'm going to make it. It's like, it's really hard. And you have to have a bit of marketing sense to you, or at least enough sense to ask somebody for help. And, for me, I've always been used to just taking care of myself, right? Like, I can do it all. I can do everything. And I one day was like, no, I need to ask for help. I have no idea what I'm doing anymore. I can treat, but I have to have people coming in the door to treat.
So how did you tell us more? How did you end up growing your practice?
So I'm in an area where I'm not from. I came here to get my master's and stayed. I didn't really realize at the time that if you start a practice, you don't necessarily move it. Especially if you have a job in one of the professional worlds, you are not guaranteed to be able to just open a practice and be in the black again. So I kind of, I guess, naively started my practice here. I actually, and it was like 11 years ago, I actually did a groupon. And that's even a word you don't hear much anymore. And I think I sold like 460 groupon things. So I was working for $12 a session at most. Wow. But what it did was it got me some leverage. It got me some patients, and they stayed with me for a very long time. And then they referred people in. Would I do that today? No, I won't discount my services today, but I think as I just cried when I heard the number. I was just a lone practitioner, like maybe a year and a half in, and it was really scary, but it was a really good thing for me to do because it gave me a lot of exposure and it gave me a lot of experience. I mean, I was treating 50 plus people a week, which is a lot for acupuncturists because we spend, some of my treatments are up to 2 hours. Right? So like, we're not the 7-minute rotation. Seeing 50 people is a lot. And so, but it was good exposure for me in an area where I didn't know one person really, except for my competitors, my colleagues. And it was really good practice because I just had so many different issues coming in my door.
Interesting. And so it seems like your main thing you started, really the core was the Groupon practice, right? Is that what really drove the growth in the early days?
I think that, and there was a newspaper article that went out because, again, I didn't have anybody to like talk to and be like, hey, send out a podcast about how awesome I am, or, no, I was no different than your neighbor. So I had to kind of build up that name. Now I'm mostly referral based, and so there's like a marketing funnel thing, right? Like I know very little about it, but you start big and then you try to figure out like that top thing. I'm at that where it's more specific marketing or referral based. Now, a lot of MDs, surgeons, PTs, doctors in the area, chiros, know my name, parents of high schoolers.
How did you get on that newspaper?
You had to just write in, and it was, I can't remember what it was, but I was so excited. I got like a whole half of a page in our local newspaper. And I remember I still have the picture of me like standing there being like, look at it.
That's hilarious. That's awesome though. It feels great when you're like in public on like a magazine or a newspaper, something like that. Like that's
not targeted, but at that point I didn't need to be targeted, nor was I sports medicine or orthopedic. So I didn't just come in and see me and let me learn.
And how did you meet your colleagues? Like, did you just go to their office? Did you go to meetups? Friends?
Happy hours were actually a really good opportunity for me to introduce myself as well. That's not my colleagues, but I'm thinking back to the marketing piece. Yeah, right. So the very few people I knew in Minnesota would invite me to happy hours when I still had time to go. And people would be like, oh, wait, I want your card. That was a really successful way, because if you get in front of people and you can give them that elevator speech, and they meet you and you're personable and, all of that, then they're much more likely to connect. My the colleagues that refer to me, some of them I don't know. They're like, oh yeah, this doctor, but my name has started to circulate around this area. And some of them I have barked up so many trees. They say you have to, isn't it contact one person or 20 for every one lead you'll get? Well, I think it's more like you have to contact 50 people to even like have a window crack. So
that's funny. So I actually have something, and let's backtrack a little after this as well. But basically, I have something called the 60-32 rule. So I reach out to 60 people in my network. Out of those 60, 30 will say they have time in the next 2 weeks to jump on a 15-30 minute catch-up call that I haven't talked to in 90 days. Out of those 30, I'll get at least 2 referrals. And referrals for me are pretty good. They're a couple K a month in marketing, right? So basically, that's how it works for me. But I think that we stumbled upon one of the keys here that I want to highlight for the doctors that are coming up or haven't even done this yet. Getting your ground game, right, set up in terms of your practice, right? Being on Yelp, being on Groupon, being on Facebook, maybe reaching out to a couple local news sources, et cetera. Like in the beginning, when you're forming the marketing side, and you should really ideally have like a system like at least once a week where you go through your marketing process and do stuff. That's so key, right? Because now what it looks like is it's snowballed over time, right? Going to those happy hours, et cetera, and building out those key partnerships. That's what helps the practice grow. And also once you stop doing it, it's going to be harder to go, right? But if you continue doing it, you're going to keep growing. So that's gold. And so tell us, obviously, what everybody wants to know, that's a Minnesota Vikings fan out there. How the heck did you get in touch with the Vikings? Or did they contact you?
Yeah, so it's kind of a mix. So I was working on some professional athletes in different sports. And it's really funny. My husband works for the Minnesota Wild, the NHL team here. And I had cold called, which is not always the best route to take. Yeah. But what am I to do? I'm this little Idaho girl living in Minnesota being like, I'm an elite endurance athlete. Like, you guys should want me. I know you should. How do I convince you that you should? Well, let's just say I didn't convince them, but I sent a letter with my resume and to all the head athletic trainers, because they're the gatekeepers in this world. And my now husband actually sent the letter back to me being like, thanks, but we're not interested. the head athletic trainer at the Wild actually like put it on him to send the letter back to me. I didn't know him, but I always thought that was really funny. He's like, I probably sent you that letter. And we went back and he's like, yep, that is me. I sent you the denial.
Wow.
Yeah, but I was working on these athletes, and so it just kind of like led to different things. And somebody I just knew, not well, I wouldn't even call a friend, said you should contact the COO of the Vikings because I think you would be really great to work there. She was in like men's clothing, and so I reached out to him, and he didn't respond. And she said, no, but they're Super Bowl, they're in award season, like reach back out. I reached back out, and within 4 minutes, he had emailed me back, CCing people in the Vikings organization saying, we would really like you to have a meeting here. And I was getting this really professional letter together, doing all this stuff. And the head athletic trainer wrote me and said, hey, can you meet on Monday? We've been looking for an acupuncturist. So it's kind of a mix of both. But yeah, I was actually working with some of our bigger athletes and stars prior to getting that job.
That's fantastic. And how did you get your first professional athletes? Is that just like a standard for, acupuncturists or?
No, it was a baseball player was my first, one of the twins. And it was just a connection. Hey, you need acupuncture. Hey, here's Hilary. And it just kind of led from there. So it's been a journey, and it's funny. I'm going to say this because I think it's a good pearl. So I had some heartache in athletics already, and my mom was watching me like, get excited about an opportunity, and then it didn't come to fruition, and another opportunity, and nothing was playing out. And she just said to me one day, like, do you really think you want to work with athletes? Do you really want to keep trying this? And I was like, I know it seems insane every time I call you crying. Like, I get it, but yes. And it probably wasn't like 6 weeks later, I had this job with the Vikings.
Wow.
It was so funny. I was like, aren't you glad I kept at it?
Yeah, I think that, for me, like, this is my third company, right? My first one, like, made a couple, it's not like I completely failed, right? Because I don't think people ever completely fail. There's always lessons and stuff, So my first one made, a couple K. My second one made more. And now finally I got a team of 11. I just hired an executive assistant, like we're growing and things are happening, right? But I think it takes that engine and that motivation. And it's much easier to just go with the flow than say, okay, I'm going to control my own destiny, But
yeah,
I think
maybe for some people, but it's not easier for me. I'm just so, when I do the personality assessments in coaching, it's like high achiever, competitor, perfectionist. It's like, I have a job with the NFL. Like, sweet, you made it to the top. Like, you can chill. Nope. I'm still going. So
that's I love that because I resonate with that a ton.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
So you were on this ride, and you're still obviously working with the Vikings, et cetera. How did COVID impact you, and how did you overcome it? Because it just came out of nowhere.
Yeah, COVID was big, right? Like, I think when it kind of hit us all, I remember I was actually working on one of the Major League Soccer players, and he came in and he's like, what is this? This is like, and I was wearing a mask by that time. I was one of the first to kind of, or not the first in the world, but in one of the buildings I work in, to just be like, you know what, this sounds like it could be bad. And we were kind of laughing, and not a week later, everybody was quarantined, businesses were stopped. So yeah, I mean, it's been a journey. The journey's not over. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know how it's going to end, but it has hugely impacted me. So, applying for grants and different things, going back and looking at my income from 2019 and 2020, I mean, it's at 50%. So,
50, wow. Really we took a 30% hit.
And I think most of what you do is virtual, but the people that you work with we all need our people. Like we're, we have clients, we're client facing. But I really think that everything has a silver lining. And when that started, I went back to ground zero and went, okay, do I want to redo some of this foundation? And so I was spending probably 20 plus hours a week just reworking a few things. And a lot of it was COVID based, like well, we need to do some different marketing. I'm doing like Facebook Live videos, different things like that, like trying to figure stuff out. But a lot of it was like, oh, hey, cool, let's get coaching launched. Let's redo this part of the website. Let's really look into this. Where do we want to go? And so it kind of forced my hand in something, because like you said a minute ago, sometimes you just roll with things and you don't even know that you're rolling with something until you're forced to sort of reevaluate. And so I reevaluated where I was at and where I was going, and put some time into having even a thicker, stronger foundation moving forward.
Wow. So now that you got this foundation, and I think that's the opportunity with COVID, right? When you start from ground zero, you can really say, well, what could I have done better? And I think everybody's mindset should be, how to come back stronger, right? And you got that vision now. And so what's been kind of the path that or the tricks you've used to bounce back? Because I think everybody kind of contracts and then they're like, okay, time to go forward.
From COVID?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
because it seems like you're bouncing back now from what I'm hearing.
Yeah,
right. Like
I am bouncing back. I think it was just consistency. Like I never, and I'm going to use the word vacation, and COVID, I'm not saying is a vacation. What I'm saying is when it first hit us, it changed our routine. Right. So it wasn't fun. It wasn't a vacation, but it changed our routines. I never changed my routine. I still worked out. I still ate the same foods. I still showed up at work, even if I didn't have patients. I put all of that energy into my practice. And so I think it was just that I was super consistent, and I didn't ever pull back or take the foot off of the throttle. I just kept going forward, knowing that Jada Studios was going to make it through COVID. But my goal was to make it through stronger, as you said. So what little trick? I don't have anything. I think it was just that consistency, and not going, oh, okay, I'll just take a little break. I didn't do that at all. I didn't go, oh, there's government funding. I went, okay, well then let's use that. Let's get bigger, let's get better, let's get stronger. And so then when people started to roll back in, I was ready to go and to take them on. Also launched my coaching practice during COVID, but that we're still, kind of working through. And
so if you had to give another doctor, right, that's listening out there, maybe another acupuncturist in Washington or whatever, right, or maybe chiropractor, et cetera, right, because we have different doctors listening, a takeaway from your story, from your journey, right, of how to grow a practice. It seems like there's a lot of work that you've put in. What would you tell them? Where should they start? Where should they start focusing on? Or where do you feel like most doctors, when you look at them, you're like, well, they're missing this that I'm doing. Like they should all be doing this as well to improve.
Well, I would say that a lot of the doctors that I interact with have that, because I want to interact with that like top tier. But I would say be really clear on where you're going. I think so many people, as we said, they're just kind of rolling. I think if you know where you're going, and that's never been my problem. Like I am so focused. I'm like laser focused. I'm like that racehorse with the, flaps on. Know where you're going and what your attributes are, because, most of our greatest attributes are also our greatest downfalls. Yep. So I know that high performer, that perfectionist, that competitor, also was the downfall in my ski career, right? Because that's what caused me to overtrain. But know that, be really real with yourself and where you're going and what you're doing. And I think that reality check can really help you, especially when you know what you're good at and what your attributes are.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This is now, I think that's 100% correct, right? Because especially even stuff as basic as writing things down, right? Like where you want to go, where you want to be. A lot of companies we talk to don't even have these types of revenue goals, et cetera, right? Like I'll commonly hear like, oh, I don't know how much we're going to do this year. And they have a team and another partner, et cetera. It's like, if nobody knows what you want, how are they going to give you what you want? Right.
You're not. You're going to be like in the Jungle Book. It's like, I don't know. What do you want to do? What do you want to do? Like, yeah. I think it's really important. And I treat my employees like they're my teammates. They stand beside me. but I have a mission, I have a vision, I have a plan, I know how much money I want to make. Like I do have all of that written down and I can produce it if need be. I think it's really important to be franchisable, you know, to be able to reproduce what your business does. It doesn't mean you franchise, it means that you can reproduce what you do. That's how you, I think, can, you know, you're the professional in this, but I think that that's a really good step forward to reaching your goals and exceeding them.
100% agree. So you made it through the podcast. So tell us more. What should we be looking at? What should we be checking out? You know, plug it up.
Yeah, so I'm Jada Studios. I'm here in Minnesota. I do travel though. So we have a Facebook page, we have Instagram, we have Twitter, we have a YouTube channel, but all of the services and testimonials, if you want to see some cool athlete testimonials, are on our website, which is jadastudios.com. And that kind of helps lead you, you know, to the other social media platforms as well. Or you can email me, Hilary, as you can see in my picture, HILARY @jadastudios.com. And I would love to hear from any and all of you. And I really appreciate the opportunity, Vlad. That was fun. You're awesome.
We appreciate it, guys. And that was another episode of Vital DocTalk.